the first of the trainings, and these are really heart trainings, the first of them is this training to see past the mask and recognize the vulnerability that every one of us is living with. That every one of us is living with. Our preoccupation, usually when we're with each other, we're, in some way rehearsing what we're going to say next or caught on what our agenda is. And so we rarely look and just ask that question, what does this person need? What's going on inside you? What's it like for you right now? Very, very powerful. I remember a story I heard years ago, I've shared at some point here, of a guy in the army who was actually taking a course for managing anger, but had a very strong element of mindfulness, of training in it. And so he was practicing. It was, mindfulness-based stress reduction. And he went to a supermarket, and he was very busy, and he loaded up his cart and got into a lane. In front of him was a woman who only had 2 items in her cart, but she was in his lane. She wasn't in the express lane. So he started fuming, and she had a child, and she handed the child to the clerk that was there, and they were oohing and ahhing over the child, and meanwhile this guy is just like steam coming out of his ears. I'm a busy man, I have things to do, I can't believe this is, then some little wake up. Okay, pause. That's always a start. Pause, okay, what's going on? Start to check out inside him what's going on. And he could sense how he's, under the anger was this fear that there's not enough time. I mean, how many of us know that sense? And that his life would fall apart if he didn't get stuff done. We know that one, right? So he started being present with that and calming down some. When he opened his eyes, he noticed that the little girl was really cute. So when it was his turn, they left. He said to the clerk, he said, oh, that little girl was adorable. And she said, oh, thank you. Actually, that's my daughter. My husband was killed in Afghanistan last year, and that was my mom, and she brings my child over so we can visit twice a day, have a little time together. So I share that not because every one of us is always struggling with that great a loss, but we all are struggling with loss. Every one of us is in a body that's changing and aging and gets sick, and we lose those we love. And this is an uncertain world. So to move through this world and be with each other and have that sensitivity to pause and really wonder, what's it like for this person right now? Is part of creating a more compassionate and a more peaceful world. Let's just take a moment and practice, okay? I've been talking a lot. Give you a chance to check in. This practice is simple. You just, in some way, come into sitting still and closing your eyes, or lying and closing your eyes, however you are. And let this be a pause. So this is a chance to pause and just feel your intention in this pause to in some way wake up the heart, cultivate a more sensitive heart. Just feel your own sincerity. And perhaps feel your breath. And relax with the in-breath. And relax with the out-breath. And we'll just explore this training in a very simple way, bringing to mind someone you were with recently who's under the weather, that was somebody who's having a hard time. It could be in the last day or week, but somebody you know who's having some struggle And the invitation is to let this person come to mind and bring them right here so you can sense close in this person. You might see his or her face. You might see what it is that visually lets you know this person's having a hard time, whether they look distraught or sad or fearful. And you might sense underneath the appearance, well, what's life like for this person? And it's okay if there's some of the storyline, what you know this person's going through. But see if you can sense from the inside out, how is this person feeling? See if you can sense from the inside out, what's this person's view of the world right now? Is this person feeling that core sense of, I'm not okay as I am? Is this person caught in a fear of failure? So just taking some time, you're really offering a gift of your presence to sense more close in. What's it like to live inside this person's heart and mind? Can you sense what this person most needs to feel that would be helpful? To believe or trust that would be helpful? Can you imagine what words or actions you would offer if you were right with that person that might affect their heart in a good way? Sensing for now just that you care and you can offer your wish, your blessings, whatever wish you have for that person. And when you're ready to open your eyes. It's that simple and that difficult to actually take a couple of minutes. I think we did about 2 minutes. And yet take the time to bring ourselves more close into the reality. There's some sort of a saying that to be kind, we have to swerve regularly from our path. You know, meaning we have to keep on, we have this idea of getting things done and where we're on our way to, and we have to be willing to pause and actually be with who's here. So this is the first of the trainings, is to pause and ask that question, you know, what's it like for this person? The correlate is a willingness to express our own vulnerability to others. Okay? It's not easy, but if we can, we invite the same from others, and then there's this field of kindness that starts emerging. I remember at my wedding, one of the vows that Jonathan and I both loved and we both shared was a Rilke line or quote. It says, "I want to unfold. Let no place in me hold itself closed, for where I am closed I am false. I want to stay clear in your sight." So it was this commitment just to be real and honest about what was there. And I thought it was a great idea. And I had this, sounded just so beautiful. You know, I'm not going to pretend, I'm not going to cover over, I'm just going to express the real stuff that's here and, you know, feel accepted in that shared, you know. It was a great idea, and it became really, really hard very, very soon, because 1 year after we got married, I started getting sicker, and I started losing my capacity to do all the fun things that we like doing together. And, you know, I had gotten him a wetsuit for I think, for my first gift to him, so we could boogie board together, and I couldn't be in the ocean and swim. So that happened, and I found that I was getting increasingly insecure in the relationship because I wasn't the woman that he first met, and I wasn't going to be fun. I was a person who was getting more and more immobile, and it was, I think it was the first time I've probably said this out loud to a group, but it was really, really, it really set off like, is this okay? Is this going to be okay in our relationship? And so it built up, and I knew I had to name it, and I did. And he was very good at creating a space for that, and very tender in his response, and it enabled him to talk about some doubts he had and some of the ways he was doing his work and so on. But the upshot is, by naming something real, it brings out it makes it safe for another person too. And then there's a field of shared compassion that we live from that is beingness. Like we landed up in more beingness because of it. This is the way Mark Nepo says it. He says, we waste so much energy trying to cover up who we are, when beneath every attitude is the want to be loved, and beneath every anger is a wound to be healed, and beneath every sadness is the fear that there will not be enough time. When we hesitate in being direct, we unknowingly slip something on, some added layer of protection that keeps us from feeling the world. And often that thin covering is the beginning of a loneliness, which if not put down diminishes our chances for joy. It's like wearing gloves every time we touch something. Our challenge each day is not to get dressed to face the world, but to unglove ourselves so that the doorknob feels cold, the car handle feels wet, and the kiss goodbye feels like the lips of another being, soft and unrepeatable. So, contacting our own vulnerability, being able to express it, and being committed to look and see the others. Next part. The next training, this is the other side that's equally important, is what we do with namaste, which means we look at another person and we see that who's really looking back is that sacred, that spirit, that awareness, God, whatever language we want, but it's something we deeply have reverence for. It's pure. How do we do that? How do we see past the persona and really get the awareness and love that's there, that innate quality? I'll share a story, and we're going to practice this one too. This is a story I've always loved. It was told by Sister Helen Rosa, and a nun, and she was teaching at a school in Minnesota, and she says, all 34 of my students were dear to me, but Mark Eklund was 1 in a million. Very neat in appearance, but had that happy to be alive attitude that made even his occasional mischievousness delightful. Mark talked incessantly. I had to remind him again and again that talking without permission was not acceptable. What impressed me so much, though, was his sincere response every time I had to correct him. Thank you for correcting me, sister. One morning, my patience was growing thin when Mark talked once too often, and then I made a novice teacher's mistake. I looked at Mark and said, if you say one more word, I'm going to tape your mouth shut. It wasn't 10 seconds later when Chuck blurted out, Mark's talking again. I walked to my desk, very deliberately opened my drawer and took out a roll of masking tape. Without saying a word, I proceeded to Mark's desk, tore off 2 pieces of tape and made a big X with them over his mouth. I then returned to the front of the room. As I glanced at Mark to see how he was doing, he winked at me. That did it. I started laughing. The class cheered as I walked back to Mark's desk, removed the tape, and shrugged my shoulders. His first words were, "Thank you for correcting me, sister." At the end of the year, I was asked to teach junior high math. The years flew by, and before I knew it, Mark was in my classroom again. Since he had to listen carefully to my instructions in the new math, he didn't talk as much as in ninth grade as he had in third. One Friday, things didn't feel right. We were working hard on a new concept, and I sensed that the students were frowning, frustrated with themselves, edgy with one another. I had to stop this crankiness before it got out of hand. So I asked them to list the names of the other students in the room on 2 sheets of paper, leaving a safe space between each name. Then I told them to think of the nicest thing they could say about each of their classmates and write it down. It took the remainder of the class period to finish their assignment, and as the students left the room, each one handed me their papers. Charlie smiled. Mark said, "Thank you for teaching me, sister. Have a good weekend." That Saturday, I wrote down the name of each student on a separate sheet of paper, and I listed what everyone had said about that individual. On Monday, I gave each student his or her list, and before long, the entire class was smiling. "Really," I heard whispered, "I never knew that meant anything to anyone. I didn't know others liked me so much." No one ever mentioned these papers in class again. I never knew if they discussed them after class or with their parents, but it didn't matter. The exercise had accomplished its purpose. The students were happy with themselves again and one another. That group of students moved on. Several years later, after I returned from vacation, my parents met me at the airport, driving me home. I knew something was off. My father finally said it. Mark was killed in Vietnam. The funeral's tomorrow, and his parents would like it if you could attend. To this day, I can still point to the exact spot on I-494 when Dad told me about Mark. The church was packed with Mark's friends. All I could think of was, "Mark, I would give all the masking tape in the world if only you would talk to me." After the funeral, most of Mark's former classmates headed to Chuck's farmhouse for lunch. Mark's mother and father were there, obviously waiting for me. "We want to show you something," his father said, taking a wallet out of his pocket. "They found this on Mark when he was killed. We thought you might recognize it." Opening the billfold, he carefully removed 2 worn pieces of notebook paper that obviously had been taped, folded, and refolded many times. I knew without looking that the papers were the ones on which I'd listed all the good things each of Mark's classmates had said about him. "Thank you so much for doing that," Mark's mother said. As you can see, Mark treasured it. Mark's classmates started to gather around us. Charlie smiled rather sheepishly and said, "I still have my list. I keep it in the top drawer of my desk at home." Chuck's wife said, "Chuck asked me to put his in our wedding album." "I have mine too," Marilyn said. "It's in my diary." Then Vicky, another classmate, reached right there into her pocketbook, took out her wallet, and showed her worn and frazzled list to the group. I think we all saved our lists. That's when I finally sat down and cried. I cried for Mark, for all his friends who would never see him again. I'm crying for also this power of goodness, of seeing the goodness, to heal our hearts. We need to tell each other. We really need to be mirrors for each other. Every one of us needs it. So the 2 basic trainings, and it takes pausing and it takes intentionality, are this willingness to see the vulnerability, and this willingness to see the goodness, this, "Oh, there you are," really calling out that goodness, this namaste. One teacher, Sri Nisargadatta, says, just if you run into conflict, just say to yourself, "I am God, and you are God," and that's it. Just that. So we see the spirit, the beingness that's shining through. it takes dedication. And if we commit to consciously relating to each other, just those around us, like if each of us said, okay, we had in mind certain people that we're just going to just tune into more, the circles will widen. They will widen. The more and more we'll be nourishing a kind of collective sense of belonging. It's amazingly powerful. So it's this sense of seeing who's there, the beingness, that helps us to step out of our destructive consuming and care about the earth. We can sense all this life we really cherish. We don't want to overconsume. We don't want to, in these different ways that we do it, make toxic our larger body. We sense belonging. Similarly, when we start widening the circle and sensing beingness, we don't want to violate other people. This is the path that actually takes us towards a more peaceful world. Really sensing the spirit that shines through all beings. One woman who lives in Uganda sent me an email. She had gone to Rwanda for a weekend trip to the Genocide Memorial Center there. And she saw this plaque that was incredibly moving to her, and this is what it said. It was written by Feliciana Tagwa. And it said, "If you knew me, and you really knew yourself, you would not have killed me. If you knew me, and you really knew yourself, you would not have killed me." These practices, these trainings of the heart, are the trainings that actually will enable us to bring more healing to the world. But the truth is, as Gandhi said, we have to be the change that we seek. And what that means for each of us is to really begin to wonder how our actions are affecting other people. We really begin to look and see who's there. So I'd like to close with that in that spirit by inviting you to do a little meditation that pushes these pieces together. Okay? So this will be our final little meditation. And just begin as you pause by sensing your own sincerity, and that you care about loving without holding back, that's a longing. That you care about living more from beingness. And use your own language and sense your own words, but sense what matters about loving presence. And then from that place of sincerity, bring to mind someone who's close to you. Anyone who comes to mind. Someone you would practice this with in a more regular way. Inviting that person right here. And as you did before, take some moments to sense, as with every human, how this human experiences their vulnerability, where the insecurity is, or perhaps the self-doubt, the hurts. Just to let yourself take in the truth of human vulnerability in this person. And to sense this person's goodness, Take some moments to remind yourself of what you really value about this person. His or her humor, love for life, way of showing love. Just a look in this person's eyes when they're feeling alive and happy. And sense your wish for this person. You might imagine that you're looking into this person's eyes as we kind of do with Namaste, that bow, and in some way sensing, I am God, you are God. You might substitute the word spirit or awareness or loving presence. But that sense of I am this beingness, you are that beingness, here we are. So you can sense that kind of ice cubes melting, that you can really sense the water, the consciousness, the heart that shines through. Both of you. And then bring one more person to mind. One more person you'd like to explore this kind of being-to-being quality with. Beautiful exploration. And again, let that person be right here. Sense them close in. What's life like for this person? Take a moment to sense the struggles or disappointments, the challenges. What is this person living with? You could just step inside and look through this person's eyes and this person's heart. What's it like? And just feel your tenderness for this person. And sense the goodness of this person, the basic goodness. What you love about this person, what brings up a sense of appreciation. You might sense how this person's eyes shine when he or she's enjoying beauty or happy or being playful. Sense your wish for this person. You might even imagine whispering it to them. They can hear it. And again, if you could imagine both of you looking into each other's eyes. I am God and you are God. That same beingness, consciousness, light shining through each of you. And then just take some moments to feel the heart space that's here. When we're resting in beingness, the heart space can be quite boundless, quite edgeless. And just sense anybody that appears right now in your consciousness, any person you know that comes up as part of this heart space. Sensing that you can experience the beingness shining through anyone who appears. Mary Oliver writes, so every day, I was surrounded by the beautiful crying forth of the ideas of God, one of which was you. So every day, I was surrounded by the beautiful crying forth of the ideas of God, one of which was you. Namaste and blessings.